this evening are George Price and Linda Juneau, and I haven't seen Linda. Is Linda here? Well, George, you may have 10 minutes more than 5, but I had asked each of the speakers to take 5 minutes. But before introducing them, I'd like to say that it's really important for us to be here. I'm sure each of you have a reason for being here, but for me it's important to be here because King's dream is still not realized. There are many things that are wrong, not just racial inequality, but inequality of wealth, the fact that there are still hate crimes in this community, in this state, the fact that I look around and I see a pretty lily white audience. That troubles me. I dearly love to see some more faces of color in Missoula and the state of Montana. And I think every time we come together for events like this, we affirm the fact that we would appreciate more diversity in Montana. And every time we come together like this, we say no to people like Matt Hale and the Church of the Creator. We say no to Richard Butler and the Aryan Nations. We say no to the Brotherhood and all of those hate groups and those racist organizations that have been so guilty of violence and hatred over the years. So each of you has a reason for being here, I know, and I'm really grateful for all of you for coming. The speakers, just an aside, when King spoke in 1963 in Washington, D.C., it was a 3-hour program. Not a single female speaker spoke in 3 hours. That's revealing, and it probably didn't strike us at the time, or most of us at the time, as such an anomaly, but it's true. And I'm glad to say that the Martin Luther King events here in Missoula have usually had women participating and speaking, and our committee is well represented with women. And today we have George Price, who's not a woman. He is African American descent. He is of Native American descent, and he is of Euro-American descent. He's an adjunct professor at the University of Montana in Native American Studies and African American Studies. He's written a book about a black Indian abolitionist named Easton, and he has just come from Hamilton, where he delivered a keynote speech there in their Martin Luther King event yesterday. Now, if Linda Juneau shows up, I'll give the introduction now so I don't have to do it again. She's of the Juneau family that you may know. Carol Juneau, the state legislator from Browning, has been very instrumental in Indian education issues. She's responsible for a lot of the name changes on the mountains and the rivers, so that we're not referring to Squaw Peak any longer. Denise Juneau in the Department of Education has been also a bell ringer in the field of education and Native American issues. And she's a student at the university, and I hope Linda is able to be here today. But in any case, I want to let George deliver some remarks. He said he had written a statement, so he wouldn't go over 5 minutes, but if Linda doesn't show up, we can give him maybe a few more minutes. So, George.
I hope she makes them. And maybe rather than go on and on as I always often do, we can use the extra time to get to the warm church a little quicker. Huh? I don't know, whatever you folks decide. And so let me separate. Oh, that's okay. I have 2 copies here, so this is a little longer than it really is. Okay. Yeah, I don't normally read speeches, but I did this time write one out, and I'll read it. Any of my students or former students could tell you that if I didn't do it this way, it would be impossible for me to stay within a 5 or 10 minute framework, or even a 20-minute framework if I had it. Okay, so here goes. I'll try to project my voice a little better. Okay, I decided to give to you today my unique perspective on the following most popular sentence from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech of August of 1963. I quote his exact words: "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but the content of their character." How am I doing? Can you hear me? I'm kind of surrounded. Maybe I'll go up here.
You're going to need to turn back.
Yeah, rotate. All right, thanks a lot. Good feedback. Does this make any difference? At least I can see who I'm talking to. Okay. So that was the quotation from the most popular segment of that speech. And I have a few questions for you. What prevents this dream from becoming a reality in this nation to which Dr. King referred? Why do we continue to judge each other not only by skin color, but by many other types of outward physical appearances instead of by the content of our characters? What I propose to you today is that Dr. King's dream has been quenched in part by the nightmare of our preoccupation with superficiality. I say in part because I in no way wish to deny or minimize the role that our society's deep entrenchment in the pit of racism plays in this quenching of the dream. What I'm actually putting forth here is a description of one aspect of the content of the American social character. That is one of the real obstacles in the way of delivering us from this racism and becoming the people that Martin Luther King's dream. We are a superficial people who judge each other by things such as conformity to popular notions of beauty in quotes, the shape and weight of our bodies, and I'll say these first 2 things are particularly emphasized for females. Seems to be more of a burden put on them regarding those superficial aspects of being. Our material possessions and our levels of poverty or wealth, by the quality and style of our clothes and cars, by our places of origin and current places or neighborhoods of residence, our genders, or by our religions, if evident by our dress and outward appearance, and many other things, some more trivial than others. But the judgments made based on these outward appearances are superficial, unfair, usually very inaccurate, and often very harmful. That is the nature of prejudice, and racism is just one of our many forms of prejudice. These habits of prejudice and superficiality have many root causes, some very deeply rooted in our economic history, which I don't have time to go into now, even if I have another half an hour, 45 minutes. But all habits and tendencies can be changed if we put some effort in that direction. One of the reasons for our superficiality in judging others is our laziness. Now, this is something you don't hear every day in a discussion of Martin Luther King's speech, our laziness. This laziness that I speak of is our tendency to seek shortcuts to understanding, to avoid the work involved in making objective inquiries, and instead just jumping to conclusions based on insufficient data. Sometimes we just accept what others tell us about people or groups of people that we have never even met Actually, getting to know people and discovering their true character is not all that difficult. And with experience, it becomes easier and more rewarding. Isn't that the way that you wish for others to know you and judge you? How many times have you felt yourself to be unfairly judged because people associated you with negative actions or character of with the negative actions or character of some other person in a social or ethnic group to which you belong? For example, teenagers are judged sometimes to all be shoplifters or potential shoplifters because of the actions of just a few people in their age group. Montanans have been judged with the help of the media to all be right-wing militia types or their sympathizers or Kaczynski-esque weirdo stereotypes. Or because our state's population is 94% white, and I'll say here, I don't like to use these terms white and black because I don't believe there are any human beings that are polar opposites, and they're very inaccurate. And I don't want to go into my whole speech I gave last night on that. But anyway, I'll use it here this one time. Because our population is 94% white, or Euro-American, I would say, some people in other parts of the country may assume that this statistic must mean that somehow this represents a conscious racist plan on our part, or some of our parts, to make it that way and to keep it that way. Even if that was just the hope of or plan of some individuals, we know that such a judgment about all Montanans is unfair. But what bothers me more than the lack of ethnic diversity in places like Montana or the 15 other states that are over 90% Euro-American is that some people find a sense of comfort and joy or a sense of well-being and security simply based on the outward appearance of an overwhelmingly Euro-American population. Or conversely, some citizens of non-white ethnic groups may look at such demographic surroundings and jump to the conclusion that they are in danger of experiencing some hostility in this place. It is such superficial judgments, among other factors, that stand in the way of achieving residential integration and the creation of more diverse communities in America. And this is the point I thought I'd be out of time. So I said, well, I'm sure that this is all that I have time for. And I hope it has given you some food for thought. Thank you for your patient attention, and peace be with you. And I hope Linda's here. Is Linda here? Is that Linda? Okay, not Linda, and she's not here. Anybody have a word or a plan or something? Maybe I'll get Tim here before I fall down. Well, Ralph.
Oh boy, looking out at you, it reminds me why I love to live in Missoula. What a great place. Okay, we would like at this time to welcome to Missoula again our new Director of African American Studies program at the University of Montana. His name is Tunde Adeleke. He's a professor of history, and he came to us this year from New Orleans, where he taught for 10 years. He's originally from Nigeria, but we're very happy to have him and his family here, and would ask you to address this great event where we're celebrating the life of Martin Luther King.
let me start by expressing profound gratitude to Missoula for welcoming me here. I came here in August with a lot of misconceptions, and by December, I'm a new person, and I'll explain to you why. First, thanks to the Missoula community for the honor of having me speak on this occasion. More importantly, this community should be commended for celebrating King's birthday. I arrived here 5 months ago and was almost immediately exposed to what I call the paradox of Montana. That is, the fight for, defense of, and support for liberal ideas and values in a state that is presumed to be opposed to such values. This is the paradox of Montana. When you juxtapose Montana, Missoula, or anywhere else in Montana, with racial tolerance, libertarian ideas, more often than not, you provoke cynicism. Let me confess that until recently, I was among those who would have questioned such connection. Many of us have a monolithic view of Montana as a state with a frontier culture, where the militia and the likes of Ted Kaczynski predominate. I had those views myself 6 months ago. Let me share a few experiences with you. When my 17-year-old son told his high school friends in New Orleans that we were relocating to Montana, they made life miserable for him for days, for weeks. On many occasions, he came home and asked if I knew what I was getting into. I had to sit and explain every day why Montana. First, they told him that there are no blacks in Montana and that he will be the only black in his school. Second, they said that Montanans do not like blacks. They were right in the first one. He is, in fact, the only black student in Loyola Sacred Heart today. So they were right. But they were wrong in the second. There are lots of Montanans who indeed love blacks. Our experience and that of other blacks that we met confirm this. When I speak endearingly of the paradox of Montana, some critics have tempered my enthusiasm with the reminder that Montana is in fact one of the last 2 states to approve the King holiday. My answer to this is that it is not when that matters, but how. I've lived in some of those states that were among the earliest to approve the King holiday and found some resentment manifested in several ways. Some people simply stayed home and bemoaned the holiday. Others defied the holiday by going to work. Even though the workplace may be closed, they keep their own personal offices open and observe a normal work day. That is how they protest the holiday. In my former school, several colleagues, liberals among many of them, who do not believe that King deserves such honor, even though they share his values, manifest their displeasure by going to their offices today. They will go there. But here we are in Missoula, Montana, blacks, white, holding hands and jointly celebrating King's legacy. In my 10-year stay in New Orleans, I did not witness this demonstration of biracial celebration of King's holidays. And that is true. It always seemed like this was just a black celebration. There is therefore every reason to applaud this paradox of Montana. Indeed, even more so when you consider the demographic character of this community. Look around you near. How many black faces do you see? You are all here primarily because you believe in the universality of King's dream and that this nation is a long way from realizing his dream. I drove to Hamilton yesterday to participate in the King's celebration. Let me share some experience with you. As I approached the town of Victor, I observed a large display board in front of a house bearing the caption, quote, "Buchanan for President," just yesterday. When I saw this sign, first I accelerated. Then I told myself, now there is one other reason why we should keep King's dream alive. Drive to Hamilton tomorrow, and as soon as you approach Victor, you will see the sign. I think it's not just a coincidence that it's not been put down. That person is making a statement. This celebration captures and symbolizes King's dream of a beloved community of blacks and whites joining hands to fight for freedom and justice. This is indeed what his dream was about. It was about acknowledging in a positive way, respecting and celebrating diversity. Although we may look different, there is much more that we share and have in common. Acknowledging this reality will overcome misconceptions and prejudice derived from ignorance. The reason we are celebrating King is not because he was a black leader. That's not the reason. Neither is it because of his leadership qualities and efforts in Montgomery and Selma and other places. Nor is it because of his advocacy of nonviolence and religious devotion, even though these are important considerations. There have been black leaders before him who advocated the same ideas, and some of them even acquired greater reputation. Yet, they are not celebrated. Why King? Why? The reason we are celebrating King is because his dream reflected the values at the very heart of the greater American dream. Values that all Americans identify with, not just blacks. Justice, equality, freedom formed the centerpiece of his ideas. He envisioned an American society where values are not racially or ethnically skewed in favor of one group, but a society built on shared values, genuine equality, and respect for differences. These are, in fact, the driving forces behind the American resistance to British rule. King's dream of a colorblind society embraced everyone. He wanted a society that caters to all shades, colors, opinions, ideologies, religious convictions. I provide some excerpts from his speeches to illustrate this. In his letter from a Birmingham jail, King wrote, quote, "Injustice everywhere is a threat to justice. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, you and I. Inescapable network of mutuality. We are tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly," quote. And in the famous "I Have a Dream" speech, this This was a dream deeply rooted in the American dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold this truth to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. He wanted little black boys and black girls join hands like brothers and sisters. He wanted freedom to reign from all corners of this nation: Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, Colorado, California, Louisiana, and of course, Montana. Why? So that God's children, blacks, whites, Jews, Gentiles, Catholics, Protestants, so that they can all join hands and sing the old Negro spiritual: free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are all free. When he went to Oslo to accept the Nobel Peace, he had this to say, quote, "I refuse to accept the view that mankind is so tragically bound to the starless midnight of racism, that war, racism and war, and that the bright daybreak of peace and brotherhood can never become a reality. I refuse to accept that," he said. "I have the audacity to believe that people everywhere can have 3 meals a day for their bodies, education and culture for their minds, and dignity, equality, and freedom for their spirits." Who doesn't want all this? "I came to Oslo as a trustee," he told them, "inspired with renewed dedication to humanity, not blacks. I accept this prize on behalf of all men who love peace and brotherhood," unquote. These are the reasons we are celebrating King. To all those who openly or clandestinely oppose this celebration, my message to them is to ask them to take time off to read King's writings and speeches. There, they will discover themselves. They will find that King spoke directly to the pain and anguish of the ordinary American. The freedom King envisioned was not for blacks alone. After all, blacks were no longer enslaved. Constitutionally, blacks had been freed since the 13th Amendment outlawed slavery. King used the concept freedom as a metaphor for the inequality and imbalances of society. What he condemned was an America that had yet to fulfill the ethos of the immortal Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal and endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. More recent scholarship underscore that it was not just a dream for racial equality, it was also a dream for social and economic justice. King wanted America to uphold its professed ideals, to universalize those rights and privileges appropriated by the few. He spoke not just for blacks, but for the poor, the exploited. This explains his confrontation with the radical black power wing of the civil rights movement and its advocacy of the color line. However appealing to alienated and exploited blacks, black power would, in King's judgment, interject a racial boundary into a struggle that demanded biracial efforts. He knew that Michael Schwerner and Andrew Goodman, the 2 white civil rights workers killed by the Klan in Mississippi in 1964, alongside James Chaney, a black civil rights worker from Meridian, and hundreds of other whites who were involved in the freedom rides, he knew that they were not in the struggle because of some paternalistic consideration for black plight, but out of strong conviction that America was not fulfilling its mission to its citizenry, regardless of race or ethnicity. You are not all here because of some paternalistic consideration for blacks. You are here because you deeply believe that this nation has yet to fulfill its mission. King refused to endorse the color line. He refused. Because he believed that it implied that all whites were united by this ethos of privilege and opportunity. He knew that there were whites who were equally victimized and oppressed and alienated by the situation. He knew that. This was even more clearly in the later change and transformations of his career. Some people saw that as a radical shift in King. This radicalism, which was very much in evidence just before his assassination, represented his universalistic disposition. It was a shift from advocacy of civil rights per se to advocacy of social and economic reforms. In his emphasis on social and economic changes, that is poverty, King touched upon perhaps the greatest problems of the average American. He was willing to transcend race, and he believed in the possibility that race could be transcended. Although he was aware of the heavy burden of race and how it impacted black lives, King strongly believed that we can overcome race. For King, race was too narrow, confrontational, and negative a defining element of the struggle. Instead, he sought his elements in values that unite rather than divide Americans. This was the essence of the beloved community of blacks and whites that he passionately spoke about. Although King saw how race shaped government policies, unlike many in the civil rights movement, he did not see this as inherent and insurmountable. Those government policies were not indicative of human imperfection for King. They were not indicative that the human being is imperfect. In fact, he did believe in the perfectibility of the human being, that we can change. The tradition of religion he came out of taught him to believe in the redemptive capacity of the human being, that we had the power to change society for the better. The concept American dream defined his perspective of America. He dreamed of a universal brotherhood of humanity. For King, the evil was the problem, not the individual. Because the individuals were themselves victimized by evil. Consequently, King saw his own struggle as a struggle against evil, not against the individual who are victimized by evil. So even when some people said, let's draw the racial boundary line, black power, he said no. No. We're fighting against the evil, not the individuals. Not the person who are caught up in the evil, no. Hence, he refused to define the problem as black versus white, but as a conflict between justice and injustice, the forces of light and the forces of darkness. King's most recent biographer, Michael Eric Dyson, has this to say about him. Quote, "Why should we celebrate King?" Dyson has this to say. Because King challenged our nation's moral memory. He beat America to make good on promises of justice and freedom for all persons. King is the defining American of our national history, Dyson says. His social vision, at its best, captured the deepest desire for freedom than any other American has ever expressed. His quest for true democracy is as great a pilgrimage as any American has undertaken. His hunger for real equality is as stirring a hope for national stability as any American has ever harbored. His thirst for racial redemption is as pure a faith in human morality as any American has dared to embrace. King's surrender of his life to the principles he cherished is as profound an investment in the worth of American ideals as any American ever made. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those words of encouragement, and especially for telling us again some of King's words. Next is always a favorite part of the program for us, and that's when we involve the young people. Every year we invite the schools to participate in essay and art contests, and then we have the winners come and read their poems or essays to you. So we would sure like to have all the winners come up now to the front, please. If you just stand up here, and then we'll have you read one at a time. Okay. It was interesting that you pointed out there's only one black student at Loyola Sacred Heart School, because all of our winners from the high school category are from Loyola. So we are happy to have them all here. First place is Sarah Moody. Where is Sarah? Would you like to come over to the microphone?
I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Martin Luther King, Jr. Dream today. He dreamed what we thought impossible. He worked toward what we thought was too far away. He stood up against what we turned our backs to. He cried out for what we all knew in our hearts was right. He died for what he believed in, and something worth dying for. Equality among all people, justice for the suffering, love for all our neighbors was all he wanted. A world where we look into the hearts of each of our brothers and sisters, where we see the greatness of each and every individual person. The dream of a nonviolent nation, to lay down our weapons, where walls are torn down. We can reach out our hands when we all join our dreams, when we embrace our differences, when we really see each other, when we are truly alive. We can make the impossible possible. We can be free.
Great. Thank you. Second prize went to Shannon McCann. McCann.
Justice. Join our people. Help us to freedom. Join us, free us. We are suffering in our bondage. Help us to find our freedom. We are innocent of any crime. Hear our cry. Our people are enslaved. Help us find justice. Peace. Every person holds the heart of the earth in their hands. When the hands are used in kindness to make people happy, the earth is strengthened, enriched. But when the hands are clenched in hatred, into fists, or around a gun, the earth cries out, suffers, and a little bit of it dies. Rights. the right to live, the right to die, the right to laugh, the right to cry, the right to teach and to learn, the rights to spend and to earn, to be in love, feel pain of loss, to clean from soul all bits of dross, the right to be hurt, the right to heal, and share with others what you feel. The inborn rights of humankind we dare not shackle, dare not bind. Discrimination, the ultimate idiocy of humans. Discrimination. Jewish, African American, Chinese, German. Different color skin, different religion, different, 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 different. Not like us, not as good as us. Not as good as us, think they're as good as us. Kill them, enslave them, discriminate, segregate.
Thank you. And third place goes to Anna Doyle. Pardon? Oh, we got turned around here. Okay. Okay.
Martin Luther King Jr.'s proclamations of peace and justice are timeless as well as imperative. His vision was of a world where discrimination didn't reign and where people were judged on their character, not their race or religion. His thoughts and dreams are ideals today's society is still striving to attain. In Martin Luther King Jr.'s mind, justice should be colorblind and fair. He saw the stereotypes that were placed on his people and the way those stereotypes affected their freedom. Many African Americans were unfairly accused and or charged for crimes they didn't commit. A lot of people use the judicial system as a tool for their prejudice, putting people they believed unworthy to be in society behind bars. These people corrupted justice and made it unreliable. Martin Luther King Jr. saw this and felt it needed drastic changing. He felt that people needed faith in the justice of America, and he knew this could be achieved with the removal of prejudice. His life's work was to make this sort of justice a reality in America. His work should not be in vain, and everyone should work as hard, because justice is what our lives are built on. And while we don't usually think of it as an important aspect in our lives, it is.
Okay, yes, I'm sorry. Anna was second and Shannon was third. In the 6th to 8th grade, Malika Korshane, 6th grade from St. Ignatius Middle School, won first place.
Let freedom ring. I have some questions for you. Has freedom rung? Think of all those people who risked their lives to get us freedom. Do they now have freedom? After protests and hard work, do they now have freedom? I will beg and plead to make sure all of the black race has freedom all over the world. If we cooperate and protest nonviolently, like our ancestors, we might be able to free all of our brothers and sisters today. We don't want any violence. We just want to free our brothers and sisters. Remember our brothers like Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther King Jr.? These are the ones we must live up to. Today, have all people achieved freedom? I ask you, have all of our ancestors' fights given us freedom? I will answer the questions I have asked you to answer. Yes, we have gotten some freedom. Our ancestors shall rest in peace, for their quest has begun. It might take us a long time, but we shall achieve the peace of freedom and equality. I will personally try my hardest to get freedom and equality for all around the world. Will you help me?
Okay, second prize went to Jackie Haynes from 8th grade at C.S. Porter Middle School.
Questions. When you take a quick look, all you can see is the taut rope. The day is bright with green autumn leaves flying in the wind. When your eyes stray for a longer look, you notice one end of the rope is wrapped around a limb of a tree. The rope is in several tight knots. You can see the weight on the other end is stressing the limb of the tree. so it looks like it is about to snap. This makes your eyes venture to the other end of the taut rope. When your eyes end their journey, you see the pale, lifeless body. It has frail clothes, so you assume the person froze to death. But when you take a look at the person's face and see no warmth, no expression at all, you see the rope is tightly wrapped around the person's neck. You also take note of the colored skin. The only thing you can't see are the laughing, hysterical, evil people who did this. They watch on in good spirits as this hapless life ends, their strong arms and their cruel eyes watching, rolling merrily. How could they possibly do this to a poor human being? This question will never be answered. This we will never know.
A hero uses all they have. My hero used his eyes to see all the hate. He saw solutions to every problem and the violence that hurt the world. My hero used his ears to hear the people's cries, the screams of the USA, the stories winning and stayed. My hero used his mind to think with knowledge so huge, to think his thoughts and to speak his dreams. My hero used his mouth to ask questions others wouldn't ask, to speak to people and to make speeches more powerful than the King of England. My hero used his hands and feet to greet at his church, to protest without violence, and to write speeches to the world. My hero used his heart to feel the pain, to never quit, and to love everyone of the world. My hero is the Prince of Peace, Martin Luther King.
All right, second prize went to Thomas Stainbrook from 4th grade at Chief Charlo School.
When Martin Luther King was 5 in 1934, he went to play with a friend. His friend was white. The boy's parents told Martin to go home and never come back. Martin didn't understand. They told him he could not play with their son because we are white and you are colored. Martin's mother explained to him about slavery and discrimination. It was a lesson Martin never forgot. In 1956, Martin began his fight against the Jim Crow laws. These were rules that said when a black was walking down a street and a white met him, the black was expected to jump aside and let the white pass. Blacks had to use different restrooms, restaurants, playgrounds, schools, and drinking fountains. A small black woman named Rosa Parks that wouldn't give up her bus seat to a white man, with Martin's help, began the civil rights movement of the United States, which earned Martin a Nobel Peace Prize. Martin Luther King Jr., who was shot to death in Memphis, Tennessee. I think the most important thing that he did in his life was to help make America a better place, so that when I was 5 in 1996, I could play with Trevor, a black neighbor, and no one cared. Martin Luther King's dream is alive.
All right, third place went to Bobby Reynolds, 5th grade from St. Ignatius Elementary. You need to play, huh? Let's see if we can find it. Must be down. Oh, great.
It ain't no joke the way black folk have to put up with us white folk. If people were like flowers, you would be a black iris and I would be a carnation. For what I am getting at is whether we are both the same color, we are still flowers, so why do we fight?
Okay, in the art contest, our first place winner was Molly Hayes. If you saw the paper this morning, she had the wonderful black and white drawing, and she's a Hellgate High School sophomore. Is Molly here? I thought she was. Okay, and second place was David Copenhaver. He had the United Peace drawing in the paper, and he's 8th grade from Ovando School. Wait. David, there's David. Okay. For a second. Third place went to Jamie Gilligan, who had the wonderful painting of the people of different colors at the lunch counter from 5th grade at Hellgate Elementary. Is Jamie not here? I thought Jamie was here. Okay, thank you very much. You can be seated.
Well, I've spoken to several of these people, these heroes, these heroic figures from the past who are living on. I haven't met some of them, but I wanted to start, excuse me, with Steve Levine, and I'll ask you to stand until I've finished. There is Steve. Steve and his wife were volunteers in the 1964 Mississippi Freedom Summer Project. They worked in a freedom school in rural Jackson County, Mississippi. They were in Oxford, Ohio, training to go south when they were told of the deaths of Cheney, Goodman, and Schwerner. And as Steve said, a somber mood came over the group of volunteers at that point. But they went ahead and they worked in Mississippi, hot, sticky, violent Mississippi that summer, and both also participated in the March on Washington in August of 1963. So Steve, we're really glad that you're a part of this community now, and we do indeed honor you. Thank you very much. Elaine Dugas-Shea. Is Elaine here? Is Bill here? I know Elaine said she would probably be out of town today. She was a VISTA volunteer in Atlanta, Georgia, with the National Urban League in 1966. She was involved in voter registration, community organizing, and door-to-door canvassing. David Purviance. Is David here? David's father was a Methodist minister in St. Augustine, Florida in the 1960s. David became a student at the University of Florida, became active in voter registration campaigns, sit-ins at diners and lunch counters, also involved in marches in Selma and Montgomery, and said that he could tell some hair-raising stories about that, and I'm sure he can. And thank you, David. Holly Walker couldn't be with us today. She's 80 years old and rather infirm, she said, but she was with us in spirit. She was a worker in the inner cities of Washington, D.C. from 1960 to 1979. She attended the March on Washington and twice met Dr. King. Tom Powers. Tom. Tom, who's now the chairman of the economics department at the University of Montana, was a community organizer for Students for a Democratic Society in Trenton, Newark, and Philadelphia in 1962 and 1963. And in 1964, he went to work with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in Greenwood, Mississippi. I know that Tom could tell plenty of war stories too and said he didn't want to do that, but I'm hoping we can conscript him as well as we can conscript the rest of you people next year for a program. Thanks, Tom. Rita Pastore. I had the pleasure of walking over from Caris Park to the church with Rita. And just had met her briefly before that. She worked in Chula, Mississippi in the summer of 1966, teaching in the nation's first Head Start program. She also worked on voter registration with the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party and participated in the James Meredith March, which also saw considerable violence. So thank you, Rita. Margaret Kingsland. Margaret was a graduate student at Brown University when she decided she wanted to assist the civil rights movement. She chose to teach at Tuskegee Institute in Alabama, where she participated in the movement despite threats of violence. Thanks, Margaret. And once again, we are thinking of fashioning a program around the experiences of these people and others that you may know of in the community. We didn't start this until fairly late in the fall, so I'm sure there are more people out there, and we do want to make contact with them. But it's very nice to have that continuity, as I'm sure you agree. And these people are people that were on the front lines then, and as Tundi said, it was black and white together, and everyone who was active in the movement, and many people who were simply peripheral support contributed to all that we accomplished then. So thanks again.
The one thing that we could think of to do, if you're interested, the NAACP has a voter, what do they call it? Voter Empowerment Project. And NAACP is taking all these stories from people, the stories about the white neighborhoods having the computers at the polling places so that registration could be checked immediately, but the polling places in the black neighborhoods only had telephones to the election office and the lines were always busy so they couldn't check. Black people's names were purged from the records. Black people had to show 2 IDs and the white people only 1. All these kinds of things are still going on, so they're working on this program, plus trying to get more people registered. So we have a basket in the back for anyone who would like to contribute to the NAAC Voter Empowerment Project and help them out. And the other thing I'd like to do is recognize all the committee members who worked to make this evening event possible. And I'm going to invite you to come up in front and sing with me so that we have more of a circle rather than just people facing the wall. Ralph Stone worked very hard. It has for many years. Tundi Adeleke, Suzanne Abufadl, Karen Lose, Linda Juneau, Ray Carlisle, Ellie Greenwood. So if the committee members would come up front, and I'd also really like to invite those people we just honored from the Civil Rights Movement to come up front, then we can all sing.
We shall Gary Stein, Sentinel High School, 4th period, 1040 on January the 12th, 2001. How's 39. That? You don't need any pen, paper, books, anything, so go ahead and put them all away, and all you need is your mind. Love would be wonderful. So Kayla, if you could put that away, that'd be great. This is just one of those times when you can't do Spanish or math or anything else, so it's a good time to just...
Or God forbid history.
Or heaven forbid you would do any sort of history self-assignment. So here's the deal. You guys all have a day off on Monday, in case you didn't realize that by now. I knew you did realize that. And every day before Martin Luther King Day, I do this, and not with the cameras. Do this because of some stuff that I want to get across to you, and the only way to do it is by stopping everything. We don't have a huge black community here, in case you didn't notice, in Missoula, Montana. And there's a lot of people who walk around saying, you know, why? You know, it seems like, you know, it's not bad having a day off. I'm not arguing that. But people say, why should we do this? And, you know, we're not black. We don't have a big black population. You know, it's great in New York or Detroit, but what significance does it have for us? And I want to remind you about a couple of things. One is you wrote lists early in the year about the 10 most influential people in American history. Most of your lists, I think, did contain Dr. King, but they also contain George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, you know, quote-unquote, the famous people. We've been conditioned over a long period of time to accept the heroes that we read in the book, and it's harder to go find some other heroes, harder to go find some other people as models that define what it means to be an American, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly of being an American. Remember when we talked about Tecumseh, I made it plain that Tecumseh was not a great Indian leader, that Tecumseh was a great American leader. Because the things that he was talking about, the things that he was trying to organize, the Choctaw and the Chickasaw and the Creek and all those tribes, was about the ideals that we all think are pretty important. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, justice, freedom, you know, the right to do what we want to do in our own worlds without being persecuted for that. And in much the same way, I think the holiday on Monday and the recognition of Dr. King's life is the same thing. I don't look at Dr. King as being a great black leader. I just think of him as being a great American because he helped us to define who we are. And I'm not expecting any of you to, on Monday, go to the parades and, you know, to spend your whole day dedicated to the memory of Dr. King and the ideals that he put in front of us. But I think it's important that you have some recognition. Now, in your lives, I mean, you're old enough now where you've been indoctrinated about a lot of stuff about Dr. King. In fact, he may be the only black person, maybe other than Malcolm X, who shows up on your list of influential Americans. And that's great. That's fine. The thing you probably know the most about Dr. King, of course, is the I Have a Dream speech, which you have here in front of you in an edited form. And that's fine. I'm not showing you the I Have a Dream speech. First of all, is there anybody in this room who has not even heard of this speech? Has no knowledge of it whatsoever? Exactly. That's my point, is that we have been indoctrinated about this particular speech. It's a glorious speech. It's a glorious moment. Great potential, great hope, great possibilities. What I want to show you is about an 18-minute clip of film from the series Eyes on the Prize, and it's the end of Dr. King's life. And in case you don't know, in 1968, there was a strike of garbage workers, sanitation workers in Memphis, Tennessee, and Dr. King was asked to provide some support for that. So this is the story of those last couple of days, last month of his life, and there's a particular speech at the end. It's the last speech that he gives in his life, and it's just a fascinating moment. It only takes a couple of minutes, really, but it's fascinating because you get the sense that with everything this guy's gone through, he knows that he's not long for this world. He almost knows that he's going to die, and it's going to happen sooner rather than later, and he's saying that that's all right. Shiraz has on the wall by the library some Dr. King stuff, and one of the things that's important for you to recognize is the statement that says, if a man doesn't have something, and he meant people, if a person doesn't have something that they're willing to die for, then that's really kind of a wasted life. And I know at 17 years old, if we asked you what you'd be willing to die for, you'd probably say your families, and that's legitimate, and your friends, you know, whoever they are. But at some point in your life, you may be asked to make that decision in a little bit more intense way or a more general way about an idea. Are you willing to fight and die or to defend a particular idea to the point of death? And so all I really am asking for you today is to just sort of take in what you're going to see and hear. but more importantly, to take a minute, literally 60 seconds on Monday, just for some appreciation for the fact that you're skiing or sleeping late or partying or whatever it is you're going to do on Monday because somebody decided it was worth dying for, literally. That he was really thinking about you, about me, and about all of us, and that is a great American sort of idea, that people are willing to go all the way to the wall to give up their life and blood because so we can go skiing, in effect, so that we can sleep late, you know, those things that we just sort of take for granted, you know, that we have a choice to do those things, and we shouldn't take them for granted. Because we do live in a country with all the bad news we've been giving you about U.S. history in the last few months. The good news is we still have a certain degree of freedom, more than other places around the world, where I can sleep late, where I can go do what I want to do, where I can go to a school board and complain about the way teachers are treated. And that's a pretty precious gift. So at 17, I don't expect you to have that yet, but you will at some point, and I just wanted you to see a little part of the story of how that comes about and how a person gives up their life for our benefit. And so a minute, that's all you need. A minute on Monday to just reflect and appreciate that sort of stuff. And you don't have to write anything down. You don't have to do a self-assignment. You don't have to go to a march and sing, "We will overcome." But if you just have some appreciation for that, then the man doesn't die in vain. And that's sort of the point of the whole thing. So play this piece of tape, runs about 18 minutes. It's about Memphis, 1968, and the end of Dr. King's life, but not the end of his work. And then I want to play a song for you. Stevie Wonder wrote in 1980. This song was written, and there were a lot of people, and probably still are plenty of mostly white folks today, who were like, what a waste. I can't believe we're taking a day off for this guy. We have teachers in this building who don't believe that it's valuable to commemorate Dr. King's life. And they say things like, well, he slept with other women, and he cheated on some tests and things of that nature. They miss the big picture, and they just say, well, that makes him a bad person. Whether you like Bill Clinton or not, I'm not sure if he's a good or bad president just by virtue of the Monica Lewinsky case. So the same thing is true here. We all have blemishes. We're not perfect creatures. So we're not saying Dr. King is perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but we are saying he made a huge contribution to who we are, how we define ourselves, and the freedoms that we appreciate. So Stevie Wonder wrote a song that's much more positive and upbeat, and it's got a 1980s techno synth pop beat, so you might not like the style, although Gabe may dance. But I'll flash the words up there for you so you can check them out and read them for yourself. So enjoy your day off and hopefully spend that 1 minute just reflecting on the possibilities and on the significance or meaning of it. So, you ready, Gabe?
Word.
Word up.
Few were paying attention.
George Wallace.
Labor conflict in Tennessee. Memphis, Tennessee. A bitter strike of black garbage workers echoed the issues of the Poor People's Campaign, the same issues King planned to bring to Washington.
And I had 7 kids in school, trying to educate my kids and trying to buy a home. It was really rough. But I know that something had to happen, that we couldn't continue on making $1.04 an hour.
The city refused to recognize the local sanitation workers union. In late January, the union accused the city of racial bias. Days later, 2 black workers were accidentally killed on the job. Their families were not entitled to compensation. The workers decided they had had enough.
So we decided we were going to be men and stand up and be men, and that's what we did. 1,300 men decided that they was tired and weren't going to take it anymore.
I say to you that I was with you for 4 years and you know me. And that when I tell you something, you can believe it. We are working.
Mayor Loeb's attitude toward the strikers was that of a father whose children had gone astray. He simply didn't understand that instead of a garbage strike, he had a racial problem, and he never did understand that.
The mayor refused to negotiate with the union. 11 days into the strike, the city's black leaders marched with the workers.
The march went fine for 2 or 3 blocks. But as we approached Madison Street, I think, the policemen began to come in and to move us over further and further to the curb.
Tempers flared. Police moved in with nightsticks and mace.
They fired upon us, and that was the turning point. And if they would fire upon us, they would fire upon anybody. Nobody was safe in Memphis.
The strike entered its 2nd month. Strike leader James Lawson asked his friend Martin Luther King to come to Memphis.
The staff was really disturbed that Martin would even consider going to Memphis. We were trying to organize poor whites, Hispanics, Southern blacks, Northern blacks. I mean, there was just a tremendous organizing job. And I didn't know how you could take on anything else. And he said, well, Jim Lawson has been around for so long, and here garbage workers on strike. He just wants me to come in and make a speech and then lead a march in the morning. And I'll be right back.
The attitude of the white community was one of dread. There's no other way to describe it. Please bear in mind that all of us who could read knew about Watts and Newark and Detroit and all of the troubles that we'd had in our big city ghettos. And we knew about the March, Selma, Alabama, and Mrs. Montgomery, and Rosa Parks in Montgomery, excuse me. All these things we knew, and somehow or other, the name of Martin Luther King Jr. was associated with deep trouble. And Memphis dreaded his approach.
All labor has dignity. But you are doing another thing. You are reminding not only Memphis, but you are reminding the nation that it is a crime for people to live in this rich nation and receive starvation wages.
King's Poor People's Campaign was scheduled to start in less than a month, but he promised to return to Memphis. The next morning, in Mississippi, he resumed his recruiting.
We were very excited about this Poor People campaign that he spoke about. It's the first time that the concentration had been on poor peoples and their living conditions. And we wanted to be a part of that. That's what we have been working toward. We felt through voter registration that political power would bring economic power. Then we were able to turn people out to hear him that had never been to a mass meeting before.
I'm not the only one. There's just so many of us right around. It's just don't have children, don't have shoes, clothes, just to go around. They're naked and hungry. Part time you have to cook your children pinto beans morning, down, and supper. They don't know what else get a good meal. We go work in Miss Lady's house for $2 a day. If we don't want to do that, she tell us, well, you got to move.
Now, I want some of you all to go to Washington with us. Even if you have to bring a whole family, we are going to have in Washington facilities, and we're going to have food, and we are going to demand that the government do something about these conditions. Greg, tell Jose and Ralph to rush on. Hello, give me some.
Despite King's personal popularity, SCLC had trouble recruiting people.
Glad to see you.
As he traveled north, King met more indifference.
March on down to Washington.
The South is a different place than New York.
Well, that's true.
You can't tell the young kids today this in Harlem that nonviolence. You can't get through to them with nonviolence today. You have to have some type of other approach with them. And I say that Dr. King's approach is a little outdated for Harlem, for Bedford-Stuyvesant, or any part of New York.
King's nonviolent approach would be directly challenged when he returned to Memphis. On the morning of March 28th, a tense and restless crowd waited 2 hours before King arrived. The strike was in its 7th week. Some younger supporters had grown impatient with the strike leaders.
While we were marching, I was about in the first 1/3 of the march, as I could tell at that point. We began to hear windows breaking. We began to hear, loud rustling and uneasiness among the marchers. And then we began to see individuals who were stepping out of the march and throwing things at one dude.
When all the glass started breaking and the noise and the police cars were running, the sirens, and everybody was all confused and just running over each other.
Fearing for King's safety, his aides commandeered a passing car and drove him to a nearby hotel. It was the first time King had led marchers who had turned to violence. Secluded for the night, he braced himself for criticism. If he couldn't control a single march in Memphis, how could he control a mass movement of poor people in the nation's capital? The FBI, monitoring King in Memphis, used its press contacts to create doubts about the upcoming campaign in Washington. The strike continued. SCLC staffers worked to ensure nonviolence at the next march. A distraught King and his closest aide, Ralph Abernathy, left for Atlanta.
That evening we went to the Abernathys for dinner, and we spent the evening at their home. And Martin, of course, liked to eat, and Mrs. Abernathy had some of his favorite food and even homemade ice cream.
And we did not talk about Memphis. The news came on, and whenever there was a flash on TV about it, he got very quiet, and he was really, really sort of depressed. And I think he was more depressed that night, I believe, than I'd ever seen him, because the violence really got to him.
Visibly exhausted, King continued his campaign for the poor. Sunday, March 31st, he spoke at the National Cathedral in Washington.
This is America's opportunity to help bridge the gulf between the haves and the have-nots. And the question is whether America will do it. There's nothing new about poverty. What is new is that we now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty. And the real question is whether we have the will.
On April 3rd, King returned to Memphis to prove that nonviolence could work. SCLC planned to challenge a court injunction blocking the next march. King hoped to avoid speaking at that night's rally and to rest instead at the Lorraine Motel.
There was a tornado warning in Memphis that evening, and it was raining, and wind was blowing everywhere. I believe a little tornado came to Memphis also. And he knew that there would not be a big crowd. And he said to me in the meeting with the staff, Ralph, I want you to go and speak this evening at the mass meeting.
And he didn't want to go to that meeting that night. He said he had sent Reverend Abernathy over, and he said, because I just didn't feel like going, but it's thundering and lightning here. We have a thunderstorm taking place. He said, but you know, Ralph has just called and said that I needed to come over. And said the people were waiting for me, and they really didn't want anybody else to speak but me. So he said, I guess I'll go on over there. And I'll call you later. He said, I'll call you tomorrow night.
All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. So just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
The next day, I was in the federal court. We got the injunction thrown out, and we got our permission to march, and I guess about 4:30 or 5 o'clock, I came back to the Lorraine Motel. And I found Martin and A.D. and Ralph and everybody gathered there, and they'd been eating and had lunch and were talking and clowning. And when I came in, Martin just grabbed me and threw me down on the bed and started beating me with a pillow. I mean, he was like a big kid. He was fussing because I hadn't reported to him, and I tried to tell him I was on the witness stand, I'm here in the federal court, and he was, just standing on the bed swinging the pillow at me, and I'm trying to duck with him saying, you have to let me know what's going on, Finally, I snatched a pillow and started swinging back, and everybody, it was sort of like the you know, after you make a touchdown and everybody piles on everybody. It was just, I mean, people just started throwing pillows and piling on top of everybody and laughing and going on. And then he stopped and said, let's go, you know, we do a dinner at 6, and it was at that time about 6 o'clock. And he went on up to his room to, you know, to put on a shirt and tie. And Martin came out and asked, you think I need a coat? And we said, yeah, it's pretty cool, and you've had a cold, you better go back and get a coat. And he said, I don't know whether I need a coat. You know, and the next thing we know, a shot. Well, I thought it was a car backfiring, a firecracker.
And I jumped naturally. And I turned and saw only his feet. And I ran to him and took his head into my hands and began to pat his cheek and said, Martin, this is Ralph, this is Ralph, this is Ralph. It will be all right. Everything is going to be all right. Everything is going to be all right, Martin.
An hour after he was shot, Martin Luther King Jr. died.
They go on to talk about a number of different things in the aftermath of his death, and I am not intending to leave you here sad and depressed about that. But before I play the next thing for you, Jenny, I'm not trying to put you on the spot here or anything, but and I may be wrong, but when he was given that last speech, did I see us get a little kind of?
I was laughing.
Well, oh, I thought you were getting kind of worked. Well, that's laughing was getting worked up. So, I just didn't know. You seemed to have a kind of startled response to it. It seemed almost shocking more than anything else.
I'd be interested in that actually. Is what kind of response did people have to that? If you had to give like a one-word response, what would it be?
Microphones always instill fear in people.
Justin. Amazing. Let's get that over.
What was amazing about it?
Amazing why someone would want to do that to another person who's working towards peace. That's why it's amazing.
What about what was amazing about the speech itself? That last,
The speech that he thought, or that he's found, like what he'd been looking for, the Word of God, or heaven, so to speak, where everybody really wants to be. And he's not afraid of any man at that point. Right. He's not afraid of dying or what's going to happen next. He knows he's reached the point to where he's need to be.
Right. We're going to talk about a guy named John Brown later in the year who's going to use kind of the same argument, that he was inspired by God to do something, although he's going to act in a much more violent way. But that's something you should consider. I'm not saying you should be religious or not religious, but sometimes you do feel these universal things, and then you just feel like you have to do something. It's like a mission. And I think that's the point he had gotten to. So you're right. Time became pretty irrelevant. Just, this is what I do. And he was consumed by that more than anything else. And I maintain that he was consumed by us, by future generations, by people who hadn't even been born yet, sort of what the Iroquois Constitution was all about. So not to bum you out, but to remind you that, people die all the time. In psychology, we talk about death and dying and the reality of accepting it. And living is much more important. Stevie Wonder wrote this song. I'll flash the lyrics up here for you. I imagine Gabe will start the line dance, and you're welcome to dance, but I'd like you to look at the lyrics while this is playing, and this runs about 6 minutes. When this is done, when the song is done, Sarah has something that she needs to tell us about, right? You can tell us something. Yeah. Okay. So listen to this, read the words, or follow along with the bouncing ball, and enjoy your weekend. That 80s synth pop sound. Oh, yeah.
it doesn't make much sense. There ought to be a law against anyone who takes offense at a day in your celebration. 'Cause we all know in our minds that there ought to be a time that we can set aside to show just how much we love you. And I'm sure you would agree, what could fit more perfectly than to have a world party on the day you came to be. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. I just never understood how a man who died for good could not have a day that would. He said, aside for his recognition, because it should never be just because some cannot see the dream as clear as he, that they should make it become an illusion. And we all know everything that he stood for time will bring, or in peace our heart will sing. Thanks to Martin Luther King. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Why has there never been a holiday? Yeah. Where peace is celebrated all throughout the world. Time is overdue for people like me and you who know the way truth is love and unity to all of God's children. Should be a great event, and the whole day should be spent in full remembrance of those who lived and died for the oneness of all people. So let us all begin. We know that love can win. Let it out, don't hold it in. Say it loud as you can. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. We know the key to unity of all people is in the dream that you had so long ago that lives in all of the hearts of people. Believe in unity. We'll make the dream become a reality. I know we will. Because our hearts tell us so.
11:15, K93 FM. That's Stevie Wonder from Hotter Than July. On a snowy Friday morning, 24 degrees outside. We got the weather forecast coming up for you in just a couple of minutes. Don't forget, Martin Luther King.
What do you guys think of this video clip that you just got to see?
I thought it was sad. I thought it was really sad. And I thought he was a really good speaker because he had a really like powerful voice and stuff. I don't know if that's
Have you ever had any experience with racism?
Yeah, like with like. Well, I noticed even like people kind of segregate against white people too, because like black people have that like kind of built up aggression of what happened, and not all black people, but sometimes they still have kind of a thing towards white people, you know, and for even like Hispanics and other.
But white people still have it too.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm just saying like it's just all. Because I handed it to Mr. Stein. I hope you didn't lose it.
I don't know, most people, and there's a lot of like prejudiced people in Missoula.
Have you ever experienced any of that? Have you ever heard your friends say anything?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I know lots of people that are prejudiced. Can you see that? I personally am not, but.
It will. Like I know someone who has a deal with another minority, like Asians, has issues with that, and won't even like buy a foreign car because of it, because of World War II.